Hello, I'm Sally Wiener Grotta, and this is Judith Magazine's Tell Me More, where I chat with Jewish authors, editors, and other creatives about the stories behind their creations. Today, my guest is Fran Hawthorne. Fran's career, like mine, started in journalism. She's written 8 nonfiction books, mainly about consumer activism, the drug industry, and the financial world, and was also an editor or regular contributor to the New York Times, Business Week, Fortune, and many other publications. But Fran never abandoned her first true love, fiction. Her first 2 novels, The Heirs and I Meant to Tell You, were published in 2018 and 2022, and together won or were named a finalist for 9 awards, including the Eric Hoffer Book Awards and the Sarton Award. Her daughter, Fran's 3rd novel, will be published about 2 weeks from the time of this recording in January 2026 by Black Rose Writing. Welcome, Fran, and congratulations on the new novel.
Well, thanks. Thank you for inviting me. And isn't every new book that comes out, it's like this little miracle, right? Isn't it wonderful?
Yes, it is. And as I always say, it's often a surprise to me, first of all, that I had another book in me. And second of all, it's real. But then you start looking at the typos, no matter how many editors.
Oh, don't.
Let's start by having you read a bit from your new novel, Her Daughter.
Sure. I'll start with the very first line of chapter 1. The email came from Dan's professional account. I'm only telling you in case the police contact you. Esme was arrested, but I'm handling everything, and she doesn't want to hear from you. Alice's fingers couldn't move properly. They hit the wrong keys on her phone, the 7 instead of the 8, the pound sign, the 9. Then the stupid phone fell on the tile floor. Finally, she managed the 10 digits for Dan's veterinary office, but all she got was his recording. The Wilson Animal Clinic is closed on Mondays. On Dan's home line in Calabasas, the phone rang and rang, just like when Alice had tried to talk to Esme 6 years ago. Now, moving ahead a little bit, she decides to try to get to the Santa Barbara police station because that's the last place that she's known her daughter ever lived. And en route, she tries to call her best friend, Roz. Alice pulled over to try Roz again, voicemail. But a second later, Roz called back. Oh, sweetie, I don't believe it, her husky voice. I don't know what to think. What could she possibly be arrested for? I don't know. Do you suppose Dan bailed her out? Can you ask him? Ask Dan anything? Are you crazy? A short noise came from Roz's end, as if she'd been about to say something else. No, of course you can't. Where are you now? Driving to the Santa Barbara police station, or trying to. I probably should tell you, Roz said slowly. I got a call from her about 6 months ago. A thick, steady thrum of cars moved onward in the lanes next to Alice. Blue sedans, gray SUVs, white hatchbacks, hybrids, gas guzzlers, a line of colorful ants, all on their determined route to somewhere. A breath froze in her windpipe. Esme called you? Yes, and you never told me? What did she say? It was mainly about Jenny. A question about Jenny. About Jenny? Why would Esme be so interested in news about Roz's daughter? It was years since the 2 girls had made jewelry and pottery together, the flowered bowl for Alice's pencil, the chains of big fat beads for both mommies. Why did she ask about Jenny? We only spoke for a few minutes. How many? Why were Alice's fingers continuing to clutch the steering wheel as if she was still driving, pushing her way into the line of traffic? Alice let go and shifted her butt on the hard polyester seat. I don't know, a few, 5 minutes, maybe 4, 6, I don't know. Well, what was it? What did she say? Well, first there was the usual polite hello kind of thing. How are you and Walt and everybody? Then the silence from Roz's end was long enough for the inhaling and exhaling of a normal breath. She asked how long it took Jenny to get fully back to normal after the drugs and the anorexia in high school. If she had any, permanent damage. Alice's stomach was kicking her, the way Esme had kicked when Alice was pregnant. Esme was on drugs? I'm not saying that. But she asked you about drugs. Yes and no. That's why she was arrested for being on drugs or selling drugs. Maybe not, sweetie. Roz's voice was calm and steady, probably the same way she spoke with her most hysterical clients. The topics people seem to be talking about aren't always what they actually want to talk about. That's one of the basics we learn as social workers. Did she mention specific drugs? No. Did you get her phone number? She wouldn't give it to me, and I forgot to do the *6 thing. I'm sorry. What else did she say to you? Where was she living? What was she doing? Did she have a job? There were too many questions, too much missing information that Alice should have known about her own daughter. She didn't really say anything else. Nothing? She just asked me not to tell you that she called.
Thank you, Fran. Please tell us a bit about the genesis of her daughter. How and when did the idea for it first come to you?
Well, I've been working on this for 10 years off and on. I wrote 2 other novels in between. And so I'm a mom. And this first happened because I was talking with somebody who was telling me that she had 3 daughters and she was divorced. And the 2 oldest ones, the father had just kind of brainwashed them, manipulated them, told them bad things about her, and they had gone off to live with him, would have nothing to do with her, and they were now trying to lure the youngest to join them and cut her off. And, she was so upset. And I was upset. I mean, like I said, I was a mom. You just can't even imagine, first of all, having your child not in your life. And secondly, the father who would deliberately do this kind of thing. And as time went on, I mean, I found there were more and more cases of this. It's actually a phenomenon that's recognized, in the child, welfare system, and some courts, in social work profession, that this happens. And maybe it estimated like 20 million Americans are going through this. Mm-hmm. So it was just something I just really couldn't let go of. It just took a long time to write.
Yeah. Well, mothers and daughters have a hard time. Most of us have. I've heard there's a mythology out there somewhere that mothers and daughters do really well together from the very get-go and never go through the terrible teenage years or anything. I don't believe it, but I've been told so. But there is a continuum of relationships where you're struggling against mom and she's trying to control you and you're uncontrollable and you're nasty to her and then you get angry at her. And there are times when one will say to the other, I will never talk to you again. And they may even last it months, or some with adults, years, but eventually they do reconnect. It isn't a totally alienation thing in many cases. But this alienation thing that you're talking about, this phenomenon, I'm trying to understand where that break actually happens, that the give and take, the fight and the need for each other and the anger at each other for that need. At some point, to have this phenomenon be so widespread in this country, there is some point at which there's a cliff that they go over. Now, you've done a lot of research on this. You've been working on it for 10 years. What is your perspective of why that happens?
Yeah, I mean, mother-daughter, yeah, the tension, I think, is kind of famous throughout literature, if not life. But what's different about what I'm writing about is that there's another party in here. And that's the father. And okay, let me stop. There are a few cases where it's the mother deliberately alienating the kids from the father. But usually it's the father deliberately alienating the children. And it could be the son, doesn't have to be the daughter. Deliberately doing this and manipulating the child. And I think that's the huge difference. When there's a mother and a daughter having, teenagers especially, right? And the rebellions, that sometimes the father can even be a helpful third party who brings them together in those more typical situations. In parental alienation, the father is deliberately trying to take the kids away from the mom, And it's not just divorce. I mean, a lot of, people, lawyers, whatever, will think of this and say, divorce. He said, she said. Of course, they're fighting over the kids. This is different. This may start when they're presumably happily married, no thought of divorce.
Hmm.
It continues long after the divorce is presumably settled. Um, so it's not just another way of fighting a divorce. It's the person who's doing the alienating has this need to be in total control, to have all the kids all to himself. Um, and I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not an expert on, you know, human
Hmm.
behavior, except to the degree that novelists, I guess, have to be somewhat. But there are a lot of, explanations. You can say it's a person who needs to be in control, a person who needs revenge. A lot of, but that's kind of the basic setup. And this was it's not a cliff that the mother and daughter by themselves would come to. It needs that other player.
Someone pushing them off,
Yeah.
pushing them over the cliff.
Pushing the mother over the cliff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, And holding on to the daughter or the child.
Yeah.
Oh
Or
my
children. But
goodness.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a frightening prospect to me. Now, Dan, who is the father here, fascinates me because we learn from very early in the book that he really doesn't want any children. He wants he wants to keep his wife Alice all to himself. He doesn't want any interruption of that relationship. And somewhere along the lines, he just becomes obsessed with the daughter, needing to hold her tight. I'm assuming it's love, that's how I read it. But I wonder about your development process with Dan, who is this person who is pushing away the idea of fatherhood and then grabs onto it like it's the most important thing in the world to the point of becoming so destructive. How did you write this? How did you handle this development process?
First, I want to say I love the fact that Dan became such a real person for you that you start trying to figure out his motivations. You're like, oh, you
Of
see what was
course.
love. I love that. Thank you. Um, Dan, yeah. And as with all my other books and as many other fiction writers, I start out with a person in mind and he runs off with the pen, right? He creates himself, he comes up with his own anecdotes. But anyway, my basic part was I started out and I knew he was too evil when I started. That I did not want a three-dimensional evil villain. I mean, a one-dimensional evil villain. Um, I wanted someone who would see one of the things about these fathers is that often to the neighbors and friends and coworkers, they seem like normal guys.
Mhm.
You don't
Mhm.
realize what they're doing. And he had to seem like a normal guy to outsiders. Um, I gave him a backstory, which I didn't plan on. It just came to me. I knew it. And then as soon as it came to me, I said, oh, yeah, this makes sense. Um, so I kept, as I said, I worked on for 10 years. I will not confess publicly to how many times I rewrote it, but each rewriting, I made him a little nicer, just tried, um, you know, to develop a little more, what's it, complication to him.
Mhm. It sounds like probably one of the more difficult characters to try to write to me.
Oh, they're, I mean, okay, well, like Alice, my problem with her that I knew I had to overcome was I did not want her to be a doormat. And especially when Dan was even more evil, but you say, why doesn't she leave him? Why doesn't she see what he's doing? So there had to be some way to make her have a certain amount of backbone, but
Hmm.
also believable that, she would not see it or not react. So that was actually really, but they're all difficult. Esme,
Yeah,
teenagers.
yeah. But teenagers, yeah.
Yeah, right.
But I remember too well how I was as a teenager, embarrassed. So, um, so yeah. Um, so, Fran, you're Jewish.
Yes.
Um, How did your heritage, your Jewish heritage, influence your writing of her daughter, which is not a particularly Jewish story, but it has a lot of ethical issues. It has a lot of questions involved that are the kinds of things that one might associate with one's heritage. Do you have any of your heritage in there? Was it influencing your book at all?
Well, I suppose my heritage always influences my writing, even in ways I don't realize. But my first two novels are very strong Jewish components. This one, I deliberately wanted to make the characters like white bread. I mean, they are, since you have to describe the characters, they are white. But I mean, their last names are kind of waspy or could have been changed on Ellis Island. None of them has a religion except for Roz, the best friend, who is a very deeply believing Catholic, because I did want some religion element in it. But there's no ethnic background. There's no holidays. No one celebrates Christmas or Hanukkah. There's no ethnic cooking. There's a scene when someone dies, and it was very hard to do a death
Mm-hmm.
commemoration and have no religious implications at all. And I did that on purpose because I did not want anyone to be able to read this book and have even the slightest excuse for saying, oh, only that ethnic group does it. And with all apologies to listeners, I'm saying this as an example. I don't want people to say, only Irish do it because they get drunk, or only, Italians do it because they have big families, or only Jews do it. I didn't want that. So that's why this is deliberately un-Jewish, un-Catholic, un-Italian, it's just very boringly WASP, the characters. And it was very hard to do because I am Jewish, and right, my heritage, my lifestyle, my family history does mean a lot, and it comes out in ways that I don't realize. So it
Yeah.
was an interesting experiment.
Yeah. It I find that it's difficult to even imagine writing a character without any ethnic background. That must have been one of the most difficult things that you had to do.
Absolutely. I mean, because I had to keep finding holidays like Halloween and Thanksgiving were the only holidays that could be mentioned. Um, you know, um, and as I said, the funeral thing. Yes, it's just so hard because automatically I think like, you know, a post-war American suburban Jew,
Mhm.
very, secular, but still Judaism is an important part for me. Um, and so we always have to get into other characters' heads when we write a novel.
Yes.
We get into people who
Yes.
aren't you. But there was this extra, like nobody could be me, actually. I didn't have any escape hatch here. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the fact that the novel I'm now working on, clearly Jewish again. Oh, phew. Such a relief.
I look forward to talking to you about that
Oh,
sometime
thank you.
too. How is writing Her Daughter different or similar to your experience with your other two novels?
Both. You know, um, it was, I mean, I'm the same person. I still have my system, you know. I have to start with an outline. I cannot even imagine how I could ever get to the end if I didn't know the steps I planned on to get there. But the outlines always change. They change themselves. The characters change.
Mhm.
So, okay, that's my process. Um, but this was different because, yeah, it was less clear cut in a way. Um, the character, it was, for some reason, it was harder. Well, I think also The Heirs, my first one, was just much more clear cut for me. Um, it was prompted by my own family story. That my dad got out of Poland with some of his family when he was a kid in November 1937. So kind of lucky, barely doing it. And I've just, all of us, all my cousins, we're always very conscious of that. And when my son was in first grade, there was a little boy in his class whose parents were Polish Catholics who had been born and raised in Poland. Now, obviously, they were born long after the war, so was
Mhm.
I. But I had a knee-jerk reaction. What did your grandparents do during the war?
Mhm.
And and I would talk to other people. I was so ashamed of this, except that I talked to other Jewish, descendants, and they had the same reaction. So that created a really clear-cut theme for that book. I knew what it was going to be about, and the emotions were so real in me. So that somehow was easier. This one, um, some of the there's one chapter in this one that's so hard to write. I actually could not reread it, And I did finally because I can't let my raw writing go there.
Yeah.
So this one is just, while it's less clear, it's just much more emotional for me. And
Hmm.
then, like I said, the rewriting, it wasn't clear to me. With my other two, I know exactly. Well, the first one I knew exactly where it was beginning. The second one, I decided after one change. This one, I had so many different beginnings. It's just because it has so many different plots and so much in it. I didn't know.
Hmm.
And couple different endings. It was,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, yeah. Uh,
Well, congratulations, you got it done.
I did. Thank you.
um, so I'm curious. Um, you've had quite a career as a journalist. How did writing all those articles and nonfiction books prepare you for writing fiction? I have my own answer to this question, but I'm sure you have yours.
Oh, I'd love to hear yours maybe after we tape. Yeah, I mean, I had to overcome a lot of training. I
Hmm.
was trained, write tight. Suddenly I don't have a word count. And I mean, as a freelancer, I worked for so many different places and they had their different
Yeah.
styles. But basically, it was still traditional journalism or maybe analytical, but you don't use adjectives or adverbs. And I still try not to overuse them in fiction. You don't have opinions. You don't expound. You don't have feelings, So I free up myself. It took a lot of trial and error till I got the hang of it. But some very good things. I am disciplined. That's right. You give me a deadline, I get it in on time. I
Hmm.
know, and I know how to pace. I know you can't save it all to the last minute. Um, Also, I know how to research. And I mean, I went to some ridiculous lengths in all cases for researching and doing even the most niggling tiny bits. Okay, I'll give you one funny one. There's a scene where Alice is eating a Boston cream, donut, whatever, and she likes to scoop it out inside the cream with her finger. How would that be done? I had to buy at least two of them to try it myself. Okay, but that's a silly reason. But I mean, I also did a lot more research too.
Yes.
I mean, I went every scene in here and I walked this, I mean, the scenes that are take place in real places, the Santa Monica Beach, the Madonna Inn, which is a crazy restaurant. Um, Other things, the Mission Santa Barbara, University of California, Santa Barbara. And I walked all those steps and I took copious notes, and so that was good. So I feel a lot more confident, at least in the details.
Right. Oh, I found that as a journalist, and I'm sure this is true for you, that because we write under so many voices, conforming to various styles of the magazines or the newspapers we're writing for, that it's easier for me, at least, to write dialogue in different voices. And also, I find that I was very lucky in my editors. I learned a lot from them about where to cut and where to put more strength. Now, most of my work was in feature work, which is different from news. But it's so that but it's always about telling a good story, and the shape of the story and how it shapes. These editors, when I was quite young, helped me understand that. And so I feel we were both very lucky to start in journalism.
Oh, that's a nice thing to say. Yeah, well, as a friend once said to me, whatever else, we earn our living by our pen, metaphorically. And
Yeah,
yeah, that is really a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to say.
yeah, it is. It is. So you've been a writer for a while now. What have you learned as a writer that you wish you had known when you started out? that you might be able to help others who are starting out?
Well, I wish that I hadn't waited so long um, to, get back to fiction. It
Mhm.
was, how does that something that helps otherwise? I guess I would say if you have a have a different kind of career path that you've been want, like maybe you're not a writer and you want to write, or maybe you're a writer like I was, but wanted to do a different kind of writing. You know, find that time, do it. Um,
Mhm.
but something more practical. Let me think. What did I know as a writer? Well, yeah, no matter how good a writer you think you are, you're not. So you have to, you know, um, yes, you need, I mean, I knew this already, but this is something I think it's important for writers to learn. You do need other people to read your writing, and there are
Mhm.
many different kinds. And I've never used beta readers, and I might try that for the book I'm working
Mhm.
on now, which is beta readers for people who don't know. Okay, so typically what many of us do is we will, um, if we have an agent, the agent will read it over. We might hire what's called a developmental editor, an outside editor, who's career professional, who knows how to find holes in books and how to speed up or slow down plots or whatever. Um, and then their publisher, they may be very unlikely, but there might be editors who work with you. Those are all professionals, and they read with a certain eye. A beta reader is you and me going to the bookstore and picking out a book to read, is somebody who's not a professional, but who loves to read and who reads books with a very different kind of eye. And I think I'm going to try that next time. It's just a
Mhm.
totally different kind of input. So,
Yeah. And I find it very interesting at times. But also, have you ever done book clubs? It's an interesting experience to hear how people have read your book.
oh, yes, I've talked to book clubs, and I love that for two reasons. One is you don't have to worry about spoilers, but two, um, you do get, and I get the most wonderful answers. They're wonderful because readers see things I didn't even put in,
Yeah.
you know,
Uh-huh.
or yes, I put that in and they saw it. Yay. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's book clubs are wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a thing that I say to all of them is the book you read is not the book I wrote because they put their own spins into it. And that's what is wonderful about reading. Well, thank you so much, Fran, for joining me today. It was wonderful being with you.
Oh,
My
I'm just
my
going to
guest
thank you
to,
for inviting me.
my guest today was Fran Hawthorne, whose newest book is Her Daughter, which is coming out from Black Rose Writing 2 weeks from the time of this recording. Great cover. And it's coming out in late January. It's currently on pre-sale on Amazon. Now, you've always heard me say this. I'll say it again. Ordering a book on pre-sale is one of the best ways to support an author. So please do think of that. You can connect with Fran on her website, hawthornewriter.com. That's Hawthorne with an E on the end. And on Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, and Goodreads. As for me, my two newest books are Of Being Woman, a collection of feminist science fiction from Noble Fusion Press, and Daughters of Eve from Bait Publishing, which is an essay-based workbook and journaling guide for exploring the nature of our lives today through the lens of the stories of ancient female archetypes. My website is sallywienergrotta.com. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, sometimes on Blue Sky, and on Substack. Two Substacks, actually. My personal page of essays, interviews, and such, and as a contributor to Judith Magazine, which is where you are viewing this now. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you, Fran. This was delightful, finally meeting you almost in person.
Thanks, Sally. It was great.